Hey everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Today we're going to be talking about Prigozhin and his plan for Russia. While I had a good grasp about what's the Prigozhin is like and what's the position he's in, there were a couple of kind of dark zones that I was not sure about that kind of didn't build a full-on picture what is his plan, what is he really playing for. But today Prigozhin released a short film where he played on camera and discussed a lot about the issues and the resolution of his requests that happened a couple of days ago with his threats of leaving Bakhmut, now supposedly being postponed because of Ministry of Defense caving in to Putin's requests to grant Prigozhin the weapons and ammunition that he needs. However, Prigozhin is still not happy and he's talking a lot, but let's dissect what he actually said and what it meant. Firstly, let's recall some events in the recent days that led to the current situation. If you want to find out more, I recommend you watching my last video on the topic that I did, and I talk in details about them. But in generally, what happened is that Prigozhin was very unhappy with the situation in Bakhmut, where Wagner forces could not break Bakhmut on the sides, so they were forced to storm this through the city proper itself, which is a nightmare for any commander. And the flanks were basically attributed to the soldiers of the regular Russian army. Prigozhin is stating that the problem of getting through Bakhmut is the lack of ammunition that is not supplied from the Ministry of Defense. I explained that this is most likely because Ministry of Defense is preparing ammunition for the Ukrainian counteroffensive. And more than that, there was a scheme that was uncovered about Prigozhin actually receiving a lot more ammunition than he was supposed to compared to other units in the Russian military. Since then, Wagner's and all their might and mythos about the mighty Wagner force has kind of disappeared, and it turned out that they only can attack pretty much the same as the Russian military, with only the difference that they're a little bit more tolerant to the deaths of their comrades, mostly because there was plenty of just fresh meat from the Russian prisons to substitute instead of a death of the actual Wagner troops proper. But now it's definitely getting into the Prigozhin's troops proper, and he finds himself in a very difficult position. He is definitely looking at the map, and he understands that taking Bakhmut is probably problematic. There's going to be a lot of his own army that's going to be killed in these attempts. More than that, additionally, he's in conflict with the Russian Ministry of Defense. It's the Shoigu, it's the Gerasimov. So he had some of people that he was loyalty, like because Russia is authoritarian regime, so it's all about loyalty. And there were some people that were very good foot with Prigozhin. So they were, in a sense, one might say, loyal to him. That allowed Prigozhin to get a lot more ammunition than before and essentially get some kind of progress and build this cloud around himself. But now he sees that it seems very much that Russian Ministry of Defense wants Wagner removed. This is started from the idea that Russian forces needs to be unified under the Ministry of Defense, and all of these different private military companies should be either small local or they should be incorporated in a greater force of under Russian Ministry of Defense. Prigozhin is not very happy about it. So he feels that if Wagner is taken from him, then he is basically done for. He's a dead man walking. And if he's not going to give Wagner to the Ministry of Defense, then it seems that it's the Ministry of Defense that sent Wagner to their doom in Bakhmut. And he's very much afraid that if the Ukrainian counteroffensive starts and he sees that some of the troops on their flanks are actually crumbling, that this will lead to Bakhmut becoming their grave. That it's the Ukrainian troops, if they break through on flanks, can actually put Bakhmut in a position where it's the Wagner forces that are encircled in Bakhmut. So Prigozhin is fighting both for the life of his personal Wagner units, his personal army, both for his own life, both directly, I'm pretty sure, and by proxy, because he's alive and useful only while he's contributing to the battlefield. And Prigozhin wants to try to find the way out because he lost some favor with Putin. That was clear after Surovikin was relieved of command, and it was Gerasimov and Shoigu that was back in the seat. And Prigozhin pretty much tells how it is. So in the video, he talks that the request that he made and the threat that he set, that they will leave Bakhmut on the 10th of May unless they're supplied with ammunition, it was satisfied by Putin on paper when it was approved that Surovikin will be a negotiator with the Ministry of Defense, and the Ministry of Defense will approve additional ammunition to Prigozhin. Now, from the yesterday, he showed a letter essentially. Well, he didn't show it, but he told the videos that the letter said those things, because we still need to remember that he might be lying. And I can even guarantee you that he is lying about certain things. But there is a purpose for that. So what he was telling is that the ammunition that they've agreed to supply to Prigozhin is not enough. But the catch is that he is now in a position of catch-22, because nothing that is on paper is going to satisfy Prigozhin. In that movie, later on, he actually goes on a tour to visit some of his fighters that are fighting on the front line. So some of the artillery units, some of the tank units, some of the mortar units, etc., etc. And the numbers that these people that are supposedly on positions, though they are clearly set up and they have rehearsed these speeches, but the numbers of ammunition that these units give is ludicrous. It is impossible for any kind of military. If these are even close to the numbers that Prigozhin was having, I would be very surprised. But like, to give me an example, so for example, they had Gyatsint, which was the 152 millimeter artillery, so like an analog would be 155 artillery of NATO. And they said that they need 200 shells per day. Now, is it a lot or is it not a lot? Well, let's try to calculate this. So we know that at the peak, when basically Popasna, the whole city of Popasna, was completely destroyed from the face of the earth, and Ukrainian positions were completely mixed with ground, Russia was firing around 60,000 shells per day on the whole front line. Russia supposedly has about some 4,000 to 5,000 artillery pieces supposedly left. Let's try to halve that number. Let's say Russia has 2,000 pieces. Now, if those 2,000 artillery pieces that we take essentially as a low bar would fire 200 shells per day, you see where I'm getting at, right? So without very difficult math, we clearly understand that 400,000 shells is definitely not what Prigozhin was using, because that number is completely out of this galaxy. It's sky high. Then there was the similar situation where he talked with the mortar crews, where they also said that they need some ludicrous amounts of mortar shells. Then there was the grenades that said that they need like almost like 900 to 1,000 grenades per day per one of these grenade throwers. It's an impossible number. But why is that? Why would he say something like this and then say that they're not getting enough because they're getting their ammunition supplied and they're getting additional ammunition? Well, this is very clearly understood by his other points that he's making. Because one of the main things that I just couldn't completely put my finger on was, who is the target audience? Because it was in my mind that Prigozhin maybe is trying to target some kind of Russian popular uprising, or he's trying to target Putin himself, because a lot of his messages were like this. Like, for example, his big write-up that he did for Putin, trying to seduce him into removing Shoigu and Gerasimov and setting Prigozhin up as these new elites, help him set up new elites. Well, now it is clear what is his aim. Because who Prigozhin is targeting after this video is extremely understood. He is looking at essentially regular soldier plus. So the mid-tier personnel that is fighting at this war. He is trying to build a mutiny inside of the Russian military. He wants to buy all of these people, all of these mobbies that are recording the videos that Russian military is so shit. All of these colonels and lieutenants, like lower rank officers that are, how he says, executing dumb orders from the stupid and archaic head of army. So he's calling them bureaucrats, he's dissing on them. It is clear that what his goal is to try get more guns on his side. He is trying to appeal to the regular forces. That is why he's going around the forces on the video and trying to congratulate them personally with the 9th of May. That's why he's shaking hands. That's why he's on the front lines and recently so much. Because these mid-level soldiers is the thing that he can work with if he wants to get alive of this. Because I believe that he was trying to see if he can get some kind of favor with Putin back, but it didn't maybe work to the extent that he is expecting. So now, even if they get the ammo, he's clearly understanding that if the flanks of their group will collapse, then Bakhmut is going to get encircled with or without ammunition for them. And he cannot leave because he can threaten to leave. The most important thing that I think I didn't quite clearly explain last time is that Prigozhin can threaten to leave. He can put this position into the lower rank officers and troops that, yes, the order is so stupid that they're not supplying enough ammunition, and that's where the not enough ammunition is coming from. Because not enough ammunition is the situation that is experienced throughout the whole front line. Because these ludicrous numbers that he's saying, they're ludicrous when you start counting them. But if it's just people that's been on the front lines for months, that haven't had a bath in weeks or even actually multiple months, that have starved or have poor supply or everything, they don't really have time to do these calculations or complex countings and so on. No, they see a guy that talks like him, walks like them, and also explains the problem and feels like them. And he wants to buy into their own kind of circle. So what he wants is he wants to build loyalty to himself rather than general staff. So what are the implications for Putin? The fact that Putin agreed to his terms have bought Prigozhin a lot of clout. A lot of clout, because Russia lives on something that they call понятие, which is it comes from a prison culture, but generally speaking, there are things that one must not do. And then there is a thing that is called прогнуться, which literally can be described as being subjugated by, so being subjugated to someone's wills, to someone's requests, so to show weakness. And when Putin said that he will send the ammunition to Prigozhin, even if their ammunition will not be sent, what mattered was the optics, and Prigozhin got a lot of clout and optics on this. And now he used the situation basically on the 9th of May, when Putin was sitting and watching the silly parade that you can probably heard discussing on every single mainstream media. Prigozhin took that opportunity and said, I am the same as you, I am a grunt, I am in the same shithole as you guys. Trust me, let's overthrow these bureaucrats. He actually was telling about what he thinks about Putin, at least his proposal for him. And his proposal for Putin in the model of the government that he wants to build is essentially a kind of the same way as King are in Denmark. So he will be there nominally, for example, as a face of the country, the one that represents the country generally. But Prigozhin wants to have his own men. He wants his own people to be in charge of the military, to be in charge of the government, to be in charge of economy. And he is going for it. So he sees that if this will not work, then basically he's dead. He's fighting for his life. He knows that Gerasimov and Shoigu wants him dead, and he's gonna try to corrupt their own subordinate staff to go against them. I want to wrap this up with a very specific message that must be said. Right now, Russian government and Putin are advocating for going and putting flowers on Russian graves, going together with Russian embassy representatives to the monuments of the Soviet soldiers and whatnot. And I want to be very, very clear. I am a person from Eastern Europe. I was born in the Soviet Union. I was raised in Eastern Europe. The victory that Putin right now is presenting as a victory of Russian people was not just Russian. It was a victory that also my grandfather was fighting to win. It was a victory that a lot of ancestors of Ukrainians, Moldovans, Estonians, Latvians, Lithuanians, Kazakh, and everyone else that made up a big Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was not Russia. It was not the Russian Federation. It was not the Putin's regime. So whenever they say that this is their victory, I want us all to be very clear and put them in their place when they try to do so. It is a victory of everyone, both on the Western and an Eastern front line. And if Russia just tries to steal the whole thing, we need to remind them that we've defeated one Nazis and we'll be able to defeat the new ones. Slava Ukraini, guys. I'll see you next time.